Hi book lovers, welcome back to my channel. I am back with another monthly book haul. These are all the books that I read back in March of 2022 and it was a pretty good reading month. I had a couple of 5-star reads this month, which is crazy. I feel like I rarely give out 5 stars anymore, and I don't think there was actually anything bad that I read last month, so it was great. Before I get into the wrap up though, I do want to share the sponsor for today's video. A big thank you to Bright Cellars for sponsoring this video. Bright Cellars is a monthly wine subscription that uses a 7-question quiz to match you up with wines that are perfect for your tastes. I do love my wines, especially when I'm out with friends or family dinners, and I was so happy when Bright Cellars reached out to me and I'm so excited to see their selection of wines. One of my favorite things in the whole wide world is treating myself to some charcuterie boards, so this wine is perfect. The amazing thing about Bright Cellars is that you get to try new wines that you've never tasted before because they work with hundreds of exclusive wine brands. Your matched wines come shipped to you every month in this giant box, and each box comes with cute little wine education cards. Here are the 6 wines in my box. I'm a big white wine drinker, and that's how I answered in the quiz. This is one of the 4 white wines in my box. It's a color fast white blend. It's a super classic, refreshing white wine, like nothing too dry because I can't do dry stuff. I'm super happy with this one. It's like nothing too sweet and too dry. Here's the rosé that I kept chilled. It's from Petal Press Wine Co., a 2021 rosé. I'm so happy with this one. It's like got a little sweetness to it and a little bite, which is exactly what I want. And I did want to try at least one red to kind of broaden my horizons, and this is the one that they sent me. It's a Stillbend California Pinot Noir. If I am drinking red wine, I do prefer drinking it with food, like with a meal, but this one does taste really good. If you're interested in getting your own box of curated wines, I do have a discount where you can get 6 bottles of wines for $55 including shipping. Thank you Bright Cellars for giving my followers a limited time offer of 50% off of their first 6-bottle box. Click the link in my description to get started. And now back to my video. So the first book in this wrap up was not the greatest, even though I had some high expectations for it. It is Good Girl Complex by Elle Kennedy. I've been looking forward to this one because it is Elle Kennedy and I love her. I love her indie romances, her sports romances, and this one is her first traditionally published book in a very long time. It's a new adult college romance set in a small town, and it sounded like your very typical bad boy, good girl kind of romance. But then people started telling me it wasn't actually that great, so I got very, very worried. And yeah, it definitely wasn't Elle Kennedy's best book. I gave it 3 stars, which was disappointing, but at the same time, I didn't really have that high expectations for it after seeing all the reviews and seeing what people told me about it. It was just a very overall underwhelming book. Like, there's nothing particularly special about it. The story pretty much plays out exactly how you would expect it to. The hero, Cooper, he gets fired from his job because of the heroine's boyfriend, and he devises this revenge plan by trying to seduce the heroine. There is cheating here because Mac is still with her boyfriend when she does stuff with Cooper, but personally I didn't really have an issue with that because you kind of expect that to happen. My issue with the book though is that I just never connected with Mac or Cooper. I just didn't fall in love with their characters, so I didn't really vibe with their romance that much. And also when I read small town romances, I want those small town romance vibes, and I also never got that either. And the whole revenge part, I was hoping for a little bit more from it, like some added angst, but even that wasn't all that exciting. So the book just sadly fell really flat for me. There is supposed to be another book in the series, so I don't know, maybe it'll be better. I actually just won a Goodreads giveaway for it, so I mean, hopefully it's better. I read Ramon and Julieta by Alana Quintana Albertson. I gave this one 3.5 stars. This was my first time reading a book by this author, and I did like it. It was fairly close to 4 stars, but I'm gonna bump it down a little bit to 3.5. I'm just always a sucker for foodie romances, and this is a contemporary retelling of Romeo and Juliet. The main characters work in the food industry selling tacos. Ramon and Julieta meet one night on the Day of the Dead, and they form this wonderful connection with each other. They form this instant connection only to find out later that their families are rivals. Like, Ramon's father was the one who stole Julieta's mother's taco recipe. He stole it decades ago and they were together, and he profited from it while Julieta's family struggled. There's the whole star-crossed romance between Ramon and Julieta mixed in between Ramon's father gentrifying the whole neighborhood. I did really like the romance here, like the chemistry between Ramon and Julieta was great. I did really love the food stuff, but there were parts of the story that just felt really cheesy to me, and the ending wrapped up way too easily after all the drama where Ramon has to choose between love and his duty and family. Still, it is a pretty cute cute read, and if you love foodie romances, try this one. And then I read one of my most anticipated reads of the year, which is Booklovers by Emily Henry. I really enjoy this one, though surprisingly it's not a 5-star read. I gave it 4 stars. I gave her previous 2 adult romances 5 stars, so this one sadly isn't quite up there for me with them, but it's still really good because I love Emily Henry's writing and I love her sense of humor. This was the most bookish book ever. The heroine Nora, she's a literary agent, and the hero Charlie is a book editor. They've never been the biggest fans of each other, and you could almost call them enemies, but then they run into each other in Sunshine Falls. It's a small town in North Carolina, and it's the place where Nora's sister drags her out for a little trip together. Charlie and Nora grow closer together in this small town when he becomes the new book editor for Nora's biggest author. The romance is the absolute sweetest. Like, Nora and Charlie were so cute together. I had so many feels when I was reading about them. Their banter and wit is chef's kiss. It does get a little emotional with Nora trying to deal with this growing gap between her and her sister slash best friend, and she's also unsure about her job, like whether she wants to continue working as a literary agent or do something else. All of it was written incredibly well though. Like, I didn't expect anything less from Emily Henry. I just wasn't quite as in love, like head over heels in love with the romance here like I was for Beach Read and People We Meet on Vacation. Like, those books I was obsessed with, but this one is more like a slow burn building kind of love here. Charlie is still a sweetheart though, don't get me wrong. Like, she totally nailed the writing and the sense of humor once again here. I also read the new QB Tyler, Always Been You. I gave this one 4 stars because it's another hot and smutty romance from QB Tyler. I gave this one 4 stars because it's another hot and smutty taboo romance from an author who writes some really good taboo romances. This is only my 3rd read from her, but I've been really enjoying her books. Love Unexpected was a favorite from last year, and this one was another great read. This book was originally a novella about adopted siblings, and she edited the book to turn it into full length. So Gabrielle, the heroine, was adopted into the Calloway family at age 2, and she fit in right away. This is mostly thanks to James, our hero, who is her adopted parents' biological son, who is also 11 years older than her. They grew up together and they're now still best friends even 16 years later, and they've always been the type to tell each other anything and everything except for the fact that they lust over each other. They're 100% in love and in lust with each other, and it gets very angsty and very, very hot. Anytime I read a QB Tyler book, I know I'm in for a very hot read, and that's exactly what I got here. And the whole forbidden aspect totally amped up the chemistry here. I had a great time reading it. I mean, it's not perfect or anything because some things are rushed and underdeveloped. Like, the characters probably could have been more fleshed out a bit, especially since we already know they're in love with each other. But I was totally here for a quick and kinky read, and that's exactly what I got. I also read a new to me author this month. This is Not My Type by Evie Mitchell. I wish I could have loved this one more, especially with this adorable cover, but I gave this one 3 stars. It's the first book in the All Access series, and it's a series about main characters who have disabilities. This first book is about Frankie, the heroine, who is a wheelchair user and a sexologist. She talks about sex on her famous podcast, but she needs someone with expertise when a listener asks about accessible rope play. This is where Jay comes in, our hero, who is a teacher at a local BDSM club and who is very experienced with rope play. It's definitely lust at first sight, especially for Jay, but the thing is, Frankie is very much a relationship kind of girl and Jay isn't. So all of this sounded really cute and good in theory, but while I was reading it, it just felt like the story was all surface level. It never felt like we actually ever got to dive deep into the characters or their story or their romance. There's a good amount of steam, but I have to admit that BDSM is not my favorite kind of steam to read about. Only a few authors nowadays can really make me into reading a BDSM romance, so I kind of had to gloss over some of those parts because I just wasn't interested. But yeah, I was so sad I didn't fall in love with the story or the romance, even though I really wanted to. My next read was Made in Manhattan by Lauren Lane. I gave it some 3 stars, even though I usually love Lauren Lane, but this one was just not as great as I wanted it to be. It wasn't a bad read, but I did struggle with our main characters. I like the idea of the romance. It's a reverse retelling of My Fair Lady. The heroine, Violet, she's been asked by her pseudo grandmother to sort of do a makeover for her long lost grandson. I mean, it sounds kind of weird because she's like a pseudo granddaughter and he's the actual biological grandson, but they're not related in any blood way. The makeover for Kane, though, to turn him from a guy who grew up in the backwoods of Louisiana into someone who fits in to the Park Avenue elite sounds almost impossible though, especially when he's super reluctant to go with any of Violet's suggestions. Sadly, Violet and Kane were just really hard to like at times. Violet is very stuck up and snobby, and Kane is just rude to her all the time. I did like though that this was an opposites attract kind of romance, and they were cute together in a lot of scenes. Thankfully, Violet does go through some character growth, and I liked her character by the end, but Kane was the one that I just couldn't stand. I honestly didn't see why she liked him so much, but besides that, it was still a cute and easy read. It's a lighthearted read, which is Lauren Lane's brand, but I just had some higher expectations for it that weren't quite met. I then read A Wall by Kate C. Wells. This is in between 3.5 to 4 stars for me. I read this one because it was a recommendation in one of my comments in my Groveling Romances video. It's a cheating romance, which I personally can read, but only if I know that it has cheating before I read it, and I have to know that there's gonna be some good groveling as well, of course. I actually like this one a lot, which is why I'm almost giving it 4 stars, but it's not quite as good as Kate C. Wells' other book that I loved, The Tyrant Alpha's Rejected Mate, and it's also really short too, so that's why I'm leaning more towards 3.5 stars. It's book 4.5 in the Steel Bones Motorcycle Club series, and so far it's the only one that I've read. It's about a formerly married couple who've been separated for 4 years after the night that John cheated on Mona after they were both struggling with Mona's constant miscarriages. It was a huge mistake that cost John his marriage and the love of his life. Obviously, if cheating is a hard limit, avoid this one, but I felt like John did a pretty good job at trying to redeem himself. He had a lot to make up for, and I did appreciate that he was completely celibate during this separation. He's literally just been waiting for Mona to give him a chance again to enter back into her life, and she finally does when she goes to him and asks him for help with a patient of hers. It's very angsty and emotional, but I just wish it was longer, but still, it's a very, very solid groveling romance. I was craving another groveling romance after I finished Wall, and I came across this one, which is Smoky by Sam Crescent. I saw and heard some crazy things about this one, so I thought I'd give it a try, and yes, it was as crazy as I thought it was gonna be. This is one of those weird books where I legitimately can't give it a higher rating, even though in my heart I really liked it, had some good groveling, and I've reread it a couple times. My head though is like, you can't give this anything higher than 3 because of how awful the hero is. This is a groveling romance where the hero literally has the heroine taken and tortured and beat up by his people because he thought that she betrayed him. They started dating and falling in love in the beginning of the book, but then he sees this photo that makes him believe that she betrayed him with his enemy. Obviously, Smokey, the MC president, is totally wrong about what he saw, but he still had Ava tortured by his club. So she was physically hurt for nothing. Her bakery and livelihood were destroyed for nothing, and now he wants a second chance with her even though he completely does not deserve it. And thankfully, Ava's like, no, I want nothing to do with you anymore. On its own, the groveling is fantastic, but I just can't forgive the hero for what he did to this heroine. I read my first 5-star read of the month, which is Blockshot by Kennedy Ryan. This is book 2 in the Hoop series, but reads fine as a standalone. This was my first book in the series, and I wanted to read it because I've heard Kennedy Ryan talking about how the hero is the definition of morality chain, and oh my gosh, I am completely obsessed with this book. Jared and Banner have my whole heart. Like, Jared is 100% Kennedy Ryan's most possessive and obsessive hero that I've read so far. He has this single-minded need to possess Banner because of how incredible she is. It doesn't even matter that she has a boyfriend, he just needs her and wants her in his life and in his bed. So these two originally met about 10 years ago in college. They were in the same class and they were both working on the same project, and Jared has such a big crush on Banner. Unfortunately, something happens that leads Banner to believe that Jared betrayed her even though he didn't, and now 10 years later they're both big sports agents. They've kind of been in and out of each other's lives, mostly in the periphery in these 10 years, but now that Jared gets the chance to be closer to Banner, he knows that he can't let her slip away again. There's so much brilliant banter and chemistry between them, even 10 years later. I mean, yes, there is cheating here because Banner is still with her boyfriend. It was just so angsty and good. I love loved Jared and Banner's characters, like how strong and alpha they both were. They were the perfect match for each other, and the book was crazy hot too. Like the steam was fantastic. This is definitely one of my new favorites from Kennedy Ryan. I then read Something Fabulous by Alexis Hall. This one I listened to in audio because the audiobook is free through KU. It's about a Duke hero named Valentine who is supposed to marry this woman named Arabella, who is a huge romantic, but unfortunately she knows that he isn't in love with her, so she runs away. Her twin brother Bonnie shows up and pretty much forces Valentine to chase after her so he can marry her even though he doesn't want to. So Bonnie and Valentine go on this cross-country journey to find Arabella, all while falling in love with each other. Bonnie is very gay and Valentine is feeling very confused about his feelings for Bonnie. I was actually really loving this one when I first started it. Like, I loved how ridiculous and over the top it was. It's very much a historical rom-com kind of read, but then things started getting a little annoying because everyone was just walking over Valentine and I was feeling so bad for him. Bonnie and Arabella's characters got on my nerves so bad that I kind of ruined the story for me. Like, the writing is fun, the idea of the story is great, but I just didn't like anyone except for Valentine. I also listened to It Takes Heart by Tiff Marcello, which is another KU audio. I've been meaning to try her again after reading The Key to Happily Ever After, and I wanted to read this one because it's a second chance romance. I really like the cozy small town feel, like the town resort thing, and I like the Filipino-American family dynamics, but the second chance romance was not my favorite part of the book, sadly. Brandon, the hero, is the youngest of the Puso siblings, and he's been living away from his family after a falling out. But then he returns home to their small town of Outer Banks after a hurricane so that he can help out with their family resort, the Heart Resort, to get it up and running. Geneva is Brandon's sister's best friend, so it's both a second chance romance and a sister's best friend kind of romance. They actually fell in love years ago. They had a secret relationship, but that didn't work out. Now they reunite after Brandon has returned home and they try to work together strictly as friends, but the attraction between them is definitely still there. I thought it was sweet, but it did feel like it was overshadowed by the family drama, the family dynamics, and the whole resort aspect. That's why I gave this one 3 stars, but I did love reading about this big family, the Puso family, who do clearly love each other, but they're still very messy. So if you love big families with characters who get up in everyone's business, try this one. I read an Elle Hazelwood novella. I read Stuck With You, which I gave 4.5 stars to. This is the second novella in her Stamina series. Sadie is the second of her 3 best friends to get her romance. Hers is a bit of a second chance romance turned enemies to lovers romance. Her hero is basically this giant blonde nerdy Viking named Eric who broke her heart weeks ago. They met one day, they formed this instant connection, and they slept together, but then Sadie finds out that he might have betrayed her. Weeks after the breakup, that wasn't really a breakup because they never got together, they get stuck in an elevator together. So there's all this delicious tension and chemistry in this tiny elevator. I loved it. I love that they had this forced proximity together, that they were forced to hash things out in this tiny space. There's so much good banter and so much good longing here. This was a great novella. I loved it. Eric is so swoony. I did love it more than the first novella, which I gave 4 stars to, but I still wish it was a full-length book. Oh my god, I would die if all 3 of these books turned into full-length books, but still, it was great. I gave it 4.5 stars. I read my very first Nora Roberts book, which was Playing the Odds. I mean, I've read her as JD Robb. I read her in Death books, but this was my first time reading her as Nora Roberts, and I loved it. I don't know why I was so surprised by how much I loved it, because I love the In Death books, and I mean, Nora Roberts is a classic, but I loved it, and I gave this one 5 stars. It is a shorter book at about 200 pages, and it was published all the way back in 1985, so it's one of her earlier reads, but it held up really well for me. I mean, some people seem to have a problem with the hero, but I loved his alphaness and his possessiveness. Justin is part Native American, and he is a self-made man. He runs a bunch of successful casinos, and as soon as he sees the heroine Sarina, he wants her. There's so much lust and chemistry and tension between these two as soon as they meet. Her background is that she is the daughter of a very wealthy and powerful man, but she wants to strike out on her own. She works as a casino dealer, which I thought was really interesting, and her father is actually the connection that she doesn't know about between her and Justin. There's a bit of suspense to the story, but the romance is amazing. I love the banter, and I loved how witty Justin and Sarina were. I I loved how he was just so clearly smitten with her and how much he wanted her. You can definitely tell here he's like the blueprint for Rourke from the In Death series, who I love. Like, he's got this broody, confident alphaness to him, and I was a total sucker for it. But this was my first time reading Nora Roberts, and I'm just so happy that I loved it. My next 3 books were all part of the same series. I read the St. View High series by Elle Thorpe. The first book is Devious Little Liars. I randomly decided to read this first book because my library got the audiobook for it, and I put it on hold. Honestly, I don't remember why I did it, because I just don't read bully romances anymore, but I'm so glad that I took a chance on this one because I love the series. I gave all 3 books in the series 4 stars. It was such an addicting series. Like, I don't normally read high school romances, but this one wasn't annoying at all. And I mean, it did help that it was reverse harem and the heroine's name is Lacey. I almost never come across heroines who have the same name as me and with the same spelling, so anytime I do, I get really excited. This was a great first book though. I love the 4 main characters. Rafe and Banjo were so freaking sweet to Lacey, but since it's reverse harem, there's always got to be that jerk in the group, and that one is Colt. He's the one who has the roughest relationship with Lacey, but I loved how all 3 of the guys grew so protective over her. It was so great to see how each of the guys brought something a little bit different to the relationship. They call themselves a 4G, which I thought was so cute and funny. So the series is about Lacey, who comes from a wealthy family in a wealthy part of town, but then her uncle, who practically raised her along with her aunt, dies in a fire, and things are a little suspicious, and she has reason to believe that he was actually murdered. So now she's attending St. View High, which is a school in a poor side of town, which is also the only clue that she has to her uncle's death. And in the middle of trying to solve this mystery, she falls for 3 guys, 3 best friends. I had so much fun with this first book. Like, the suspense was well done, the steam was great, and I mean, I liked it so much that I immediately downloaded the ebooks for books 2 and 3. Like, my library, I didn't even want to wait for my library to get those audiobooks. I was too impatient for that, so I just immediately read the ebooks. Book 2 is Dangerous Little Secrets, and it's a great sequel. It follows up right where book 1 left off. It left off on a cliffhanger. The second book dives deeper into the love between Banjo, Rafe, and Lacey, and it also develops the relationship between Lacey and Colt a little bit more, because their relationship is the one that's not as close as the other guys, and she's also finding out more about her uncle, who may not have been the outstanding guy that she thought he was. The final book is Twisted Little Truths, and it ended on such a great note. I've become such a big Elle Thorpe fan after reading the St. View High series. I did end up binging the spin-off series, the St. View Prison series, but I'll save that for my next month's wrap-up video. In this third book, things get crazy hot. You can tell how in love everyone is with each other, and I mean, yes, it is a little unbelievable that the heroine's mom, her like pseudo mom, her aunt, is just totally okay with her daughter being in a relationship with 3 guys. She was really accepting about it and didn't have any questions at all, but whatever, it's fine. I just really enjoyed the way things ended in this final book. They're all young and still in high school, but I thought it was a great series, even for someone who doesn't like reading high school romances. I mean, I think the whole reverse harem thing saved it, so if you like reverse harem, read the series. Another 5-star read for me last month was False Boys by Penelope Douglas. This is the first book in the Hellbent series, which is a spin-off of the Fall Away series. I've been waiting such a long time for this spin-off for the second generation, and Penelope Douglas did not disappoint. This was a fantastic new adult romance. It's another high school-ish kind of romance, but it's more like the characters are high school age, but the whole content is a lot more mature. Aro and Hawk were amazing together. Like, the whole good boy and bad girl dynamic was perfection. I also loved seeing the Fall Away gang again, this time as parents. It's been ages since the last time I read the Fall Away series. I mean, I kind of wanted to reread it, but I just didn't have time before I got to this one. Still, whether or not you've read the original series, this one reads totally fine as a standalone, or at least the first book in a series, because there is a little loose tie still left at the end. Again, this is a new adult romance set in high school, and Penelope Douglas is pretty much one of the few authors I can trust who can make me want to read a high school romance. Aro is the bad girl who's from the wrong side of town who comes from a poor, struggling family, and Hawk is the golden good boy who comes from a well-off family. These two end up on the run together from the police, and they devise this plan to take down this corrupt officer. Most of the book is set in this secret hideaway of Hawk's, and there's this whole mystery surrounding it. But the romance is great. It's like exciting and intense and steamy, which is exactly what I wanted in this book. It was also kind of slow burn, which was surprising, but once it got hot, it got very, very steamy. I loved it though. I love the romance. I mean, Hawk, my good boy virgin hero. Loved him. I loved all the cameos of the original Fall Away characters. I loved all the second generation characters, the cousins. I already have some ideas about who the future couples will be. I don't think anything has been confirmed yet except for like some later characters. I think Lucas and Quinn are the only ones who are confirmed right now. I'm pretty sure it's Hunter and Dylan next, but whatever, whoever the couple is, I am so excited to read it. I then read I'm So Not Over You by Kosoko Jackson, which I gave 3.5 stars to. This is a second chance romance between Kian and Hudson, who broke up months ago for a reason that we literally never get to learn. Now though, in present day, Hudson needs a favor from Kian. He wants to pretend to still be dating because he never told his parents that they broke up. Like, the first half was really great. Kian is like an insecure and anxious kind of character, but I kind of liked reading that. I think it's because his narrator gave him so much voice to his character that it was just really fun to read about him. He felt really real and genuine with his insecurities, so I liked Kian, I liked his perspective, and I was curious about how the romance would play out. But then it got to a point where Hudson just got on my nerves because it felt like he didn't put as much effort into the romance as much as Kian did. I feel like more people probably would get annoyed by Kian, but it was the total other way around for me. I couldn't stand Hudson by the end of the book. It was always Kian who had to put his feelings out there first, who had to take the first step for the romance, and I just felt like Hudson wasn't as in love with Kian as much as Kian was with Hudson, even though he should have been. So Hudson ruined the story for me, and again, we just never got a reason for why these two broke up in the first place, which I thought was so weird. I read my second Sophie Lark book, The Heir. I wanted to give her another try after reading A Brutal Prince, which I gave 3 stars to. Like, it was okay. Did not live up to the hype for me, and sadly I also gave this one 3 stars. It was okay. I mean, I'm pretty sure people have told me there are better books in the series, in both series, but I did want to try at least reading in order. I did love the concept of this mafia world though. Like, the whole series is set around this college for mafia heirs, mafia kids. The author calls it a mafia version of Hogwarts, which was really cool, and the whole school part was actually exciting to read. I just did not vibe with the romance at all, and I love friends to lovers. There was just sadly no chemistry between Anna and Leo. These two grew up together because of how close their families are. Honestly, if they never got together, I would have been more than fine with it because they really felt better as friends. It didn't feel like they were in love with each other, and honestly, I was kind of rooting for Anna to be with Dean, who is the third point of view in this book. So I was kind of rooting for them for a majority of the book until Dean does his whole date rape drug thing. The romance between Anna and Leo barely moves though because of this love triangle, and things don't pick up until like 80% into the book, and by then I was over it. And Dean's point of view, this whole added third point of view who wasn't a part of this happily ever after couple, it was a strange choice. I mean, I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either. But I will give props and say this one read really well as a standalone, even though there were a million characters, and it's like a spin-off of 2 different series. So the concept of this one was great, and I do want to read more of this mafia college, but the romance just did not do it for me. My next read was Southern Storms by Brittany C. Cherry. This is the first book in the Compass series. It's been a while since the last time I read a Brittany C. Cherry book, but I kind of forgot how depressing and emotional her books were. So this first book is set in a small town where the heroine moves to after ending her loveless marriage. Jax is the black sheep and the outcast of the town, and he is a huge jerk to Kennedy from their first meeting. The two of them are very broken characters, characters, and even though the romance starts off very rough because of how cold Jax is, they do build this connection with each other that helps them heal from their losses, and their losses are pretty big. I really like this one. I give it 4 stars. I mean, it's pretty much what you would expect from an emotional small town read. There's also this little thing with childhood best friends that I thought was really cute and sweet. I also like these small town vibes to it. I mean, there's some mean, judgy, snobby people, but there's also this really warm and welcoming community. But it's a great small town romance with 2 broken characters who find this beautiful love with each other. I then had to continue with my Arcana Chronicles binge. I read the 2nd and 3rd book in the series by Kresley. I've been loving the series the more that I read it. Like, it truly gets better and better with each book. It's kind of hard to talk about anything though without spoilers, but the whole series is about this fantasy YA set in an apocalyptic future. The main character Evie is one of 22 teenagers who are the embodiment of tarot cards, and she has the power of the Empress. In the sequel, we dive deeper into who Evie is, what her powers are, her relationship with Jack, her first love, and who she was in her past life, because these tarot cards, they keep reincarnating over and over to fight in this giant arcana war. I love this world though that Kresley has created. I think it's so cool and unique, and we do finally get to meet Death here in the 2nd book, who I've heard a lot of great things about. The 3rd book, Dead of Winter, I give 5 stars. I loved it so freaking much. This 3rd book dives into the love triangle between Evie, Death, and Jack, and I am so ridiculously invested in this love triangle. It's not even funny. I love Death and Jack so much that I don't think I could choose between them, so I have no idea who Evie could choose. Jack is technically her first love in this life. He's such a charmer. He's so sweet. I mean, he's super crass too, but he's just so protective over Evie, and he does speak French to her. And Death is, I mean, he's the literal embodiment of the Death card. He's this powerful badass, but he's got this really soft and sweet side just for Evie. I might be slightly leaning towards Death though, just because I really like how powerful he is, but I mean, there's 3 more books in the series. I have no idea what's gonna come next. The final book is supposed to come out this summer, and I'm so excited. I then read Death Wish by Webster. I love this one. I gave it 4.5 stars. It was even better than the 1st book. It's the 2nd and final book in the Deception duet, and it's such a great finale. It was perfectly dark, steamy, and suspenseful. It was pretty much the book that I wanted when I read book 1. It's a reverse harem romance series with 3 heroes who are identical triplets. Triple threat ended with this giant reveal, and now Landry and her sister are stuck with the terror triplets. I mean, they're on the run from their disgusting, abusive father, and even though they're stuck with the triplets, it seems like they're the only safe space they can find. I loved how the 2nd book changed the dynamics between the characters. Like, now Landry is the one in control. She's come into herself and knows that she has Sully, Sparrow, and Scout all wrapped up around her finger. You can see how the boys adore her and would do anything for her, and they do really redeem themselves after book 1. Also, the steam is fire in the 2nd book. It had all the steam that was missing from book 1. I love the sequel, though it does get dark. There are triggers for child abuse, like full-on rape, but I was so glad with how things ended here. I was so happy for Landry, for her sister, for the boys. It was just a really fantastic duet that I loved. I then read Shenanigans by Sarina Bowen. I am a total sucker for we accidentally got married in Vegas kind of romances, and this is exactly that. I give this one 4 stars. This is Sarina Bowen's latest romance, and both the main characters are professional hockey players, and after this crazy win, they party it up in Vegas and they accidentally get married. So Neil and Charlie got drunk enough to get hitched in Vegas, and these two could not be more different. Neil is a billionaire who comes from a disgustingly wealthy family, whereas Charlie, she grew up in a much rougher situation. She's had to fight for everything that she has, especially since women's hockey pays pennies compared to men's. After they get married, Charlie does want an annulment, but Neil kind of wants to see where this can take them because he's had a crush on her since like the moment that they met, and they've known each other for years now. So the two of them do end up making a deal. Charlie will continue to be Neil's wife, like a fake wife, so that she has this power to vote for this board thing to help Neil's family. And once they do that, they can get divorced and Charlie will get a good settlement. The two slowly become friends. It's like friends to lovers, though Charlie does have some trust issues, but Neil is just sweet and patient enough to kind of sneak under her walls. So the romance was adorable. I loved how strong Charlie was. Like, she has been through so much and she's still on top of everything, and Neil is such a sweet and humble guy, so these two were great together. I don't think I mentioned, but this is the 6th book in the Brooklyn series. I kind of forgot to read book 5, but this one reads fine as a standalone. I then read a historical romance, The Lady Thompson Heir by Harper St. George. This is the 3rd book in the Gilded Age Heiress series, and I've been looking forward to this one because I was very intrigued by Max's character in the first 2 books. He is the brother of the first 2 sisters. But I don't know if I just wasn't in the right headspace for this because I had a hard time paying attention to the story, like getting invested in the romance and the characters, and I kind of read it really fast because my audiobook was due to my library like really soon. So I do want to try this book again because right now it's sitting at a 3 stars for me, and I wanted to like it more. So it's a historical romance with a fake engagement. Max and Helena, they first met in the 2nd book when they went on a little adventure to help out the heroine in book 2. Max is an American businessman who's been in and out of London because of his sisters, but now he's back in London because his father gets sick. Max is then given an ultimatum to find a bride before Christmas, and this is when he comes up with this fake engagement thing with Helena, who needs a husband in order to get some funds for her charity. She's a widow, but she does need like the appearance of some man in her life so that other people can donate to her charity, which sucks. But they come up with this fake engagement, this fake courtship, and it works. She gets money for a charity and Max gets his father off his back. The fake courtship was really cute and fun, but I just never really got invested in these characters, sadly. Like, I appreciated them for what they were, but I felt very separated while I was reading this book, if that makes sense. I just got so distracted while I was reading this one, but I do want to try it again just to see if I like it more because I did really enjoy the first 2 books. My next read was By Any Other Name by Lauren Kate. I had been looking forward to reading this one because it's Lauren freaking Kate, who is the author of the Fallen series, which I read as a teen. I mean, I didn't love the series. It was like a super popular angel romance series, angel romance YA series that everyone was reading, but I was still crazy excited to read her very first adult romance. I will say I went in a little weary because I didn't know what to expect, but it wasn't actually that bad. I gave it 3.5 stars. It honestly could have been a 4 if not for the ending, which I wasn't all that happy with. It's another bookish book with a heroine who works as a romance editor, and she gets a promotion to become editorial director, but only if she can pass this 3-month trial. Lainey has 3 months to get her publisher's biggest author, Noah Calloway, to turn in her manuscript, which is already 4 months late. So I loved the publishing aspect. It was very, very bookish, reminded me a lot of Booklovers, and I loved how New York City centric the story was. Like, they go all around New York City and it was really fun and entertaining. But I don't know if it's supposed to be super obvious who the hero is supposed to be. The blurb is super vague about it, and I don't want to say anything to spoil anyone, but pretty easily guess who the hero is supposed to be. I mean, I don't think it's supposed to be that much of a secret. There's this whole mystery identity thing involving the hero, but you can guess exactly who he is almost from the beginning. But I did like that the romance was almost like an epistolary romance, like the main characters, they first met through email. And my biggest complaint is the ending, which ended so abruptly. Abrupt endings are one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to books. It ends on such a strange note, like right before this big event that was hyped up throughout the entire book, and we never got to see it. But besides the ending and besides the whole mystery, secret identity thing, I did like this one, and I would definitely read more adult romances from Lauren Kate. I read Mr. Wrong Number by Lynn Painter, which I gave 4 stars to. This was my first time reading this author, and it was so much fun. It's a rom-commy, enemies to lovers, brother's best friend, and a roommate's romance. Olivia is Colin's best friend's sister, and the two of them annoy the heck out of each other. Unfortunately, when Olivia needs a place to stay, they become roommates, and then to add on top of that, Olivia starts getting these texts from a random number, and it kind of spirals from there. Olivia and this wrong number, they continue texting, they start bantering and flirting and even sexting. But the thing is, Colin eventually finds out that the woman that he's been texting is none other than his best friend's sister, and she has no idea that he's the one on the other side of this conversation. So there are some epistolary vibes, which I was very happy with, but I really like this one. It was a cute and light read. I love the forced proximity. The banter, both in person and through text, was really fun. So if you love any of these great literary tropes, brother's best friend, roommates, enemies to lovers. You should try this one. Next, I read my romance book club read for March, which was 5 Rounds by Nikki Castle. This was a debut indie romance that came out last year, and even though I didn't fully love it, I thought it was a really good debut. Like, I was still very impressed by the writing and everything, and I gave it 3 stars. It's the first book in the Fight Game series about an MMA fighter hero and his roommate's best friend. So this is another enemies to lovers roommates romance, and I kind of read this one at the same time that I read Mr. Wrong Number, so I almost got confused by the two while I was reading both of them. But here the heroine Remy, she gets evicted from her apartment, so she decides to crash at her best friend's apartment because he's conveniently away for a week. So now she has a place to stay while she's trying to look for a new apartment, but the thing is she has to room with her greatest enemy, who is a huge annoying jerk. Like, Remy and Tristan both got off on the wrong foot from the moment that they met, but because they're now in such close proximity for days, feelings start to creep up. They do play pranks on each other, which I thought was pretty fun, but I will admit I got a little tired of reading about how rude they both were to each other. Like, I kind of got over the enemies part pretty quickly. They were just at each other's throats constantly, and it wasn't in a very entertaining way. But I did really like the MMA aspect to this book. Like, the whole sports part was descriptive, but nothing that overwhelmed the story. Still, I did wish that I loved it more, but it wasn't a bad book for a debut. My second to last read was Falling Embers by Catherine Cowles. This is book 2 in her Tattered and Torn series. I gave this one 4 stars. It's another small town romance with romantic suspense. Hadley, the heroine, is the second Easton sibling to get her romance in this series, and she's also the sibling who is smothered the most by her mother after her sister's kidnapping. Her mother was insanely overprotective while she was growing up, and even now that she's an adult, her mother is trying to tell her what to do with her life. Hadley now works as an EMT, and she has a side job of doing these crazy stunts for millions of viewers, millions of subscribers, and her mother is super disapproving of this, which I really felt for Hadley about. Calder, the hero, is a single father to twin girls, and he works as a firefighter, and he and Hadley actually grew up as childhood best friends, and Hadley has pretty much been in love with Calder her entire life, but they kind of had a falling out after Calder started pulling away, and it really broke Hadley how they lost their friendship. They're still in each other's lives though through work, and since Hadley occasionally babysits for Calder, who has the sweetest kids, he's such a great father, but thankfully he does eventually wake up and realize that he made such a huge mistake with Hadley. And we do get some great moments in this book of Calder trying to earn Hadley's forgiveness to try to get her to love him again. There's also some great suspense that's thrown in that blended really well with the romance. I mean, anytime you read a Catherine Cowles book, you know you get a cozy small town romance with some great mystery and suspense. So this one was great. It's a little bit angsty, a little bit emotional, and a very, very sweet read. And then my final read of March, I of course had to end this month with a Jessa Kane smutty novella. This is A Baby for the Boss, which I gave 3 stars to. This one we have a heroine who is a boss, the hero's boss. This is a pregnancy romance because the heroine wants a baby because she grew up very alone. She's this insanely smart girl who graduated from school and took over her family's company at a very young age, and she's always felt left out. So she decides that she wants someone to love, so she wants a baby, and the one day that she decides to go downstairs into the office, she meets the hero. And of course, it's love at first sight, lust at first sight, and she wants him to give her the baby. Of course, since it's Jessa Kane, she's this innocent virgin, and he's completely obsessed with her. So it's pretty much your typical read from this author, nothing too unique, so I mean, I can't give it more than 3 stars. And that is it for my March monthly wrap up. I read a total of 30 books. Let me know if you read any of these, and a big thank you again to Bright Sellers for sponsoring today's videos. And of course, links to all the books will be down in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye!